Hi, my name is Suzie Cummins. I'm a lighting designer and lighting technician based in Dublin.
Cool. Hi, Susie. Thanks a million for taking part in this.
No
Um,
worries.
can I ask you where it all began for you? Like as a child, was this something that you always wanted to do?
Well, I think so. My parents were both heavily in the arts and kind of theatre. My dad taught drama to early school leavers, and my mum just did kind of Amdram, kind of stage management bits. They actually met at the after party of a play, Shadow of a Gunman. I don't know where it was on, but my dad directed it, and my mum was at the after party, I think. And the rest is history. And when we were younger, my dad would teach kind of drama on Saturday mornings. So me and my sister went, and we're just really like heavily involved in drama all the time. Like people I meet nowadays are like, "Have you seen this movie? Have you seen this?" And so I was like, "No." And they're like, "What did you do when you were a kid?" I was like, "We went to see plays." Like, did everyone not just go and see plays when they were kids? So we went to see lots of shows all the time, and we're kind of around it all the time. And then when I was doing my leaving cert, I was really into sport as well when I was a teenager. I was a goalkeeper for Leinster and Shells at a point in my life. So when I was doing my leaving cert, I had applied to do sports physiotherapy in Blanche,
Nice.
and I also kind of in the back pocket had gotten into to do theatre studies in Clontarf. So then I got accepted into Blanche to do sports physiotherapy. So I kind of had this, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I said it to my parents, and which like was amazing that they were, as soon as I even said drama or theatre, they were like, yeah, that's fine. Like, whatever you want to do. It wasn't a, no, you can't do this. You have to get a job. They were like, that's what we've done. Or like, that's what we've had in our lives. And if you wake up every day and it doesn't feel like work, you'll never work a day in your life. That kind of
Yeah.
ethos is what they were about. So that was great. So yeah, I just decided to give the acting a go. And about 3 months into a 3 year long course, very quickly found out I didn't like acting at all. I liked it when I was younger, and I just thought it was easy, but it's really not easy. It's so difficult. And so I went to my one of my tutors, Marie Tierney, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And she was like, well, you have 3 years left, so you better figure out what you want to do. I was like, I don't know. And she was like, would you be interested in production? I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. So she sent me out with a lighting designer called John Crudden, who had similarly gone to the course to kind of do acting, and then kind of found he wanted to do more production stuff. So I went on some gigs with him. Like during college time, I was allowed to go, and then in the evenings, and I started just like following around for the first few like outings, and then I would rig some lamps and cut some gel from sweep the stage. Then he would let me like op the show, so just like press one button when the show was up and running. Then I would kind of finish off maybe tech from on another show, and then smaller shows he might just give me that he wasn't able to do, and kind of that's how it progressed, and that's how I learned. And Marie Tierney actually turned 90% of my modules from performance to production in order for me to graduate. So I still graduated and have a diploma in theatre studies, which is excellent.
Yeah.
You know, I owe a lot to all of those people helping me out at the start.
And come here
Uh,
in the very beginning, like you said, you're kind of into acting, and you're from Whitehall originally, aren't you? Is that where you're from?
Hulock.
Look, there you go.
Yeah.
But in the original kind of acting, you say there was a point when you realised that you weren't, not you weren't good at it, but you didn't like it or you couldn't do it. Has that kind of got like? Do you ever still kind of go?
Like, would I do acting? Uh, I don't know. Like, I think when I was younger, like in my teens, I was in like drama schools and stuff, and I would do the kind of comedy bits, and like comedies. Like, well, I find comedy quite easy. I find it quite easy to make people laugh, but then like the serious stuff and that kind of being vulnerable and kind of like you can hide a lot behind comedy. I think most of the time you can, because people are laughing and they're not seeing kind of the sadness or the that kind of aspect, and that's the stuff I really didn't like. I didn't like that at all. And so I think now over the years I've seen so many actors, and I know so many actors, seen the process, seen how nervous they get, and that kind of, I'm like, I definitely couldn't do it. If someone asked me to do that now, like the nerves in my stomach, like even doing this, like just talking, I'm like, oh God, like the nerves in my stomach build up, even though I had no problem when I was younger.
And come here, in relation then to when you left with the diploma, when did it, like, you kind of, I'd say Marie kind of manufactured or kind of developed a course with you that you could kind of qualify. But like, when did that become something, Jesus, is something I'm really, 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 really interested in, you know, that side of
it. I don't know. When I was in Clontarf, there actually was a point, I was doing a show for John, and it was called Dead Woman's Son. It was on in Smock Valley, and it was kind of a small Amdram show by a company called Ballymun Productions. They're not going anymore. But I remember I was in the boys' school sitting up the top, and it was like the last night, and we had so much fun all week. I was up in the show, and like I just loved the show, and at the end of it, when they were taking their bows, I was like, oh, I love this, and like I want to do this all the time. Like, this feeling is brilliant. Like, putting this show together, being a part of that creativity, I was just like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to help do this and bring these kind of things to people, bring shows to people. That was actually at the point. And I do remember saying in my head, like thanks for like showing me this, like, because I really, really thought this is what I want to do.
It's interesting because I think there's a gap, I think, in an awful lot of conversations around, and we've spoken this before, but like around arts and culture and the division, say, sometimes between, you know, production and or technical and creatives. But
yeah,
here you say that it's the same buzz. It's different output, but it's the same. Yeah. And I kind of, would you talk about the practical pieces of that, actually, you know, because, you know, the practical pieces of, and we get onto the design elements in a minute, but like where your kind of career came from in like teching and house teching and developing it through that, you know, I suppose the practical aspects of that work and what you enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I suppose I get quite bored easily, in the sense of like, I could have never managed myself in an office, and when I was starting, I never ever thought myself as a designer, because it's kind of to build that up over time. So I thought the best way into it was to become a techie, and I find kind of problem solving and realizing things and kind of realizing people's ideas, bringing them to fruition, is very interesting for me, and kind of working with my hands and kind of being the person that does the thing, really interesting. So then, yeah, I kind of got into a bit of stage management a bit, and then while I was in stage management, I was asked into the Helix as a house tech, which I found really great. It was a bizarre kind of, I never thought I'd be a house tech, but it's an excellent way to learn how to really deal with people, because you're working in a huge team. Normally when you're tech and you're kind of going in for one day get in or one day get out, and you kind of see people, and we all kind of know each other, all the techies, but you're seeing people kind of every so often. This was kind of Monday to Friday, dealing with a big team, like a big crew. There's loads of different departments in the technical aspects in the Helix, and also they get a huge, vast range of clients that come in. So you have like stage girls, TV, concerts, loads of stuff, and you're just learning how to deal with people, which I think has served me really well in kind of going on to be a designer, because I have learned how to kind of gauge people and kind of read rooms and stuff and see the tensions in the room. So then after I was in the Helix for a while, there was I went on into Axis, which I just seen as another kind of house tech job, but it actually was so much more, and really kind of, because I was kind of getting tired with being a techie kind of a little bit, and I wasn't seeing that I was getting much design work. But I went into the Axis, and it really gave me the passion back, because the Axis was where I kind of started. When I was in college, we used to do our musicals in Axis, and we still do. Clontarf does. So that was one of my first times going in, kind of doing. Marie let me design it, but it was really Dylan, your old tech manager, and Sean, who's your current tech manager. They were in there. They kind of really helped me. I was just like, oh yeah, we'll pick that color gel or whatever. So Axis has always been very special to me, and it's kind of on my doorstep from where I live anyway. So when I went in, I really never seen the projects that you had done before and the people that you work with, and it's it was a real nice kind of refreshing year. I was there for about a year in Axis. It was a real nice refreshing year, just using theatre and any sort of expression and creativity to help people in a community deal with their own problems, or just kind of any of that stuff. And there was no judgment, and like there was so many pieces of work put on, not for actors and not for theatre people, it was for the community, which was amazing. And it really kind of refreshed my kind of love for theatre again, because I was getting a bit kind of stuck down and kind of run of the mill every day kind of stuff. It was one of the creative space, which is the workshop you run for the young men in the community. Kind of, it's okay not to say you're not okay. I was just sitting there once in the auditorium. It was mental. Like there's like loads of acts and like guitars and people on stage, and you're running around all day. Like it's not easy. Like, and I remember just sitting up the back, and like everything was done. We were on the last act, and there was just one of the guys was playing guitar and singing, and all the lads were sitting there. They'd done all their workshops, and when they come in, they're real rowdy, and they kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this, blah blah blah. And then they just were sitting there, and they kind of had this nice day, and then kind of Access kind of had their respect for the day. And I was just sitting back, and I was like these are the reasons why kind of not theatre, but being creative and being in a creative space were kind of made. So like that's where I refound my love, especially this year, was kind of being in Axis, and also getting to design some of the in-house works that you produced, which were also about the people of the area. You make a point of kind of producing work for the people, by the people, which I really love. And that's the kind of work that I love as well.
And Suzie, sorry, it's interesting to me. So there was always a macro plan to be a designer. That's interesting. Was that kind of...
Yeah, I think so. In the back of my head, and also when I was in the Helix, that's one of the things that kind of frustrated me, was because I was facilitating other people's creativity rather than being creative myself. And that gets really frustrating. Like you probably know, sometimes it gets super frustrating just to be the facilitator rather than be the creator. So yeah, that's when I kind of knew. It was probably about 4 years ago, and I was like, I really don't know if I can do this techie thing all the time. I was like, there's more money in being a technician, because like you need technicians, you need crew all the time, so they get hired all the time, but there's only a finite amount of productions that need designers. So like from a like practical point of view, I was like, I should just be a technician, because I'm still doing the thing, but not fully, but I'm getting paid. But I was like, there would just be times where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to be the one doing the thing, you know, and that I could just feel that inside me.
And I mean, as a techie, you've worked everywhere, haven't you? I mean, you've kind of, what's interesting...
Pretty much, yeah. In Ireland anyway.
It's fascinating talking to actors, and they kind of go, well, I've done some work here, and maybe here. But when you talk to a technician, like, well, I actually can't name a theatre I haven't worked in. You know what I mean? It's a very different kind of journey. And obviously, you are privy to being in a room that a lot of people wouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? In relation to, I mean, I'm fascinated. I mean, I love, as a creative, I love tech rehearsals, and I just love the fact that everyone was in the room. But yet it's like a kind of enclosed version of social media. There's stuff spoken about that people think they're in the room by themselves, and they're actually not. You're going to go, no, there's about 40 people here listening to what they're saying. So then taking it into kind of the designer path for you, like as a kid, was that kind of, I suppose, imagination or imagery or design piece always there, or is that something that you picked up kind of through college?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was always mad into art. I loved drawing. I loved kind of creating images and pictures. And my dad was kind of into lighting design as well. He kind of dropped in and out of that. So like there was always bits and bobs. There was always gels at home and kind of lights at home to kind of play with. And he was very of the persuasion, like to kind of always be exploring that kind of side. Like we would always be drawn, and like he loved to paint and kind of just images and like just talking about colors and talking about things that you see, like, so that was always kind of there. And then when I went into secondary school, on my leaving cert, we started studying art history. And I hated normal history. I didn't take it for the leaving cert. I just found it dreadfully boring. So when we were like, and I loved art, so I was doing art regardless. But then my teacher was like, "Oh, we're doing art history for the leaving." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to hate all this." But I loved all of it, and I like sucked it in. I was like just talking about like light and how light can like draw your eye to things, and how it's like it shows things in different. You get the whole feel of the image just by where the light is, like even the time of day and like what you see and what you don't see. I just fell in love with all of that. Subconsciously, I didn't, like when I was in my leaving cert, I didn't think I was going to, that wasn't in my head to be a lighting designer, but I just loved all of that. And even now, like last year, my sister bought me a book. It's like the biology of the eye. And it's like, it's learning what the eye sees and what it's drawn to see, like what colors it's more, more prone to see, like, and why it does what it does, which I find super interesting.
It's gas. The last 2 minutes, you just went bing. The minute you were talking about it's fast, because I've worked with you a few times now, and it's kind of that's the incredible thing, and that's what I mean as a director. That's what you look for in as a designer, someone that kind of goes, "Hey," and kind of switches on. Like,
yeah.
I suppose what's interesting then, kind of, heading into the design phase of your career where you're kind of are now, was it a difficult step to kind of go, "I'm a designer," or was it a kind of,
Yeah, and like Aaron Monaghan always slags me because I rarely call myself a lighting designer. I'm always like, "Oh, I'm a lighting technician who I just do a bit of lighting designing," and Aaron's like, "Shut up! You're a lighting designer, but you're my lighting designer anyway." Yeah, it's very tough, I think, and I think mostly for me anyway, it comes from that kind of financial standpoint, and also, and not in a bad way, but there is somewhat, I think, of a hierarchy. Do you know, like when I was starting out anyway, I always thought designers, be it set, costume, whatever, they had this kind of air about them that, like, I was like, well, they've obviously been to art college and like studied all of this for years, and like I couldn't possibly call myself a designer because I haven't studied any of it. You know what I mean? And now, like, as I've got to know more and more lighting designers, they're like, "No, I didn't go to college for this. Like, it just kind of fell into it, you know, that kind of way." And you just, if you love something, you figure out a way to do it. So last year was when so I'd done Charlie, and it was just coming up to going to do trad, and I was just loving doing, like, kind of throwing myself into it and kind of not working for the whole rehearsal process, like being in the room, kind of, that was my thing. So I was like, okay, I really want to give this like lighting design a go, and you kind of have to kind of be free to do it, and you have to kind of be free to do the profit share bit stuff, I think, so you can kind of explore what you want to do and kind of experiment on the kind of smaller shows. But to be free, you can't work. So I was like, I need money. I need money. So last year and kind of this year, I started the process to think about trying to get bursaries, because I think that's probably the best way to do it, to get bursaries so that I can have money to kind of pay rent, get food, but also just even ring up designers and go, "Here, can I sit behind you while you do tech? Can I go into it in the rehearsal room?" But yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Like, so last year and this year I kind of went, no, I'm going to try and be a designer. But I also then halfway through last year realized that you don't have to be a poor artist, and we don't have to suffer for our art. Like, I can do design work, but I can also do the other bits, and that kind of funds it. It's just about finding the balance. And there's also, like, there's a position in techies that is called like chief elect, so it's like the chief electrician, who work quite closely with the designer. So I figured, I was like, if I can get in as chief electrician, I'll work closely with the designer and still be able to see their process, kind of understand what they're doing and why they're doing things, but also get paid. So like, that's, this year was kind of approaching designers, asking could I be their chief electrician, and that's where I kind of am this year. And then I'm going to try and save up and kind of apply for bursaries so that I can kind of really delve into being a designer.
It's fascinating because it comes up again and again and again in the industry that we work in, about career path and how do you develop it. And you mentioned bursaries there, but it's kind of, it's a grey area for, say, designers artists create, how do you actually get onto that step? So
Yeah.
the need to be very practical about that is kind of key. Suzie, is there a piece of work or a design, or I don't know, it could be an album cover, I don't know, but like, is there a piece of work that you go back to that kind of has inspired you, or is it a few pieces? I know it's an unfair question. What might be good today might be your head tomorrow. But I'm just interested, is there something that you go back to continually?
Um, Not really. It's not a piece of work or anything. It's there's just sometimes things that kind of influence your design. So like it's like Charlie, for instance, their whole play revolved around a kind of 24-hour period in real time, and then flipping back to a kind of memory state. And bizarrely, whenever anyone says dream sequence or memory state, I always see purple and will probably use purple, because at one point my dad he was like hallucinating one time because of his medication, and he looked outside and he was like, the sky is all purple, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the sky, it's purple and it's beautiful. And for some reason, whenever I think dream sequence or kind of memory state, I always go to purple. So there's just these kind of things like that always sticks with me, and that's kind of a general thing that I always do. But there's no kind of image
Yeah.
really.
Or is there sort of a play that you saw, or a kind of or a film or something that kind of not necessarily inspired your work, but kind of you went, ooh, that's after doing something now that I'm not sure what that is.
I don't know.
That's okay.
Bizarre.
That's okay. If it comes up to you for you in a second, it's fine.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, because having worked with you, I can see how. I mean, I love working with designers, but the relationships thing is really interesting, and the key relationship between, say, a designer and a director. Can you talk about how that's managed? You know what I mean? Because obviously,
Yeah.
You might have worked a lot with kind of people but kind of that the relationships still have to be managed.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. Like, and that's kind of always the thing. Like someone says before, the first hour in a tech rehearsal, which is generally the opening of the show, is always the hardest. And that doesn't take an hour. It might take longer, and it all depends on how long it takes you and the director to find the language that you both understand. So like, and that's generally what I do in the rehearsal process. I don't like when people see me, like I'll go into the rehearsal process, and I might be in the room all the time, and generally might not even be looking at what the actors are doing, because for me, a lot of the time, early on when you do the read through, you get the vibe of the play, whether it's naturalistic, whether it's kind of whatever, what time of day it is, you get that, and you get the base of your design, and then it's kind of just about marking kind of where I need to pick them up, blah blah blah. But a lot of the time I just like to be in the room, not necessarily for the director to talk to me, but to hear what they're telling the actors to do, because that tells you 10 times more than if I just have a meeting with a director and go, oh, what do you want? And they're kind of going, well, I want it to be kind of like this, kind of like this, and they can't really relay or kind of communicate that idea. But if you're in the room, it might just be a sentence that they'll say to an actor, and you go, I know exactly what you want now, but you haven't told me, but I just, from the feeling in the room. And that's really important to me. Like, I'll always set aside a load of time in the rehearsal process to be in the room, because that's when you get the feeling, and that's when the most important things are happening. Because after, and even when the director's out of the room, they forget all of that, and they kind of go back to trying to give you instructions that they think you'll want. So like colors and trying to like shapes, but it's more about the feeling. So like I try and get the feeling really early, and then when we're in tech, I just want to know that we can talk, and what way we talk to each other about how we understand, because things can get derailed very quickly. And I always say that one of the worst things you can hear a director say when they walk into a room or something is go, it's not what I thought it was going to look like. Like, that is like, oh god, what are we going to do? Oh, it's all rigged now. So it's and just communication. I just don't think like communication is pretty good in Irish theatre. It could be way better though, because like I just don't even think there should be a reason why you don't say everything that's in your head, even if people think it's too much. Like, there's definitely times you can say things over and over, and if people are talking to you, things are just need to be transparent all of the time, and then like lines won't get crossed and people will be generally happier, I think, because they know, when everyone knows what's going on.
That's a really interesting point, because I think, you know, and again, having worked with you and knowing you, you know, I'm always fascinated by your insight generally into theatre. Do you know what I mean? Like when I speak to you, say, because we were kind of here for a couple of years, it wasn't when I maybe met you for coffee after the show or something, it wouldn't be, God, Suzie, watching the lights and that. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a really interesting dynamic in great theatre or in great rehearsal rooms when you're kind of, you forget what people's jobs are. Do you know what I mean? You kind of go, and I'm wondering, does that, you know, I think because I always jokingly say, like, I'm big into sport, you know, and the majority of the time, I'm not generalizing, but it's probably the techies and the production side and even designers that are into sport. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. There's been, I think it's blurring over the years, but there's been a great trust to try and get rid of that division between technical and creatives. And I think that's why it's fascinating to hear about your role and how your career has developed, because you kind of have straddled both sides of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think it's really helped me as well, because like most designers are like this, and similarly like set designers, costume designers, you have to have been the person on the ground, I think, to fully understand, like, if I need to know how to focus a light in order how to tell someone how to focus that light, do you know what I mean? In order how to get what I want, I need to understand what the light can do in order to design that in the plan. It's the same with set designers. They need to have built or scenic sets, and costumes have been wardrobe maintainers to know how it all works in order to ask people to do things. And they're generally the best designers you can come across as a crew member, because they have a respect for you and they are pragmatic in what they ask you to do. And that's what I want to be, you know. And I think it's great as well when you come across a technician or a crew member who has an interest in the craft as well, not only just wanting to do their job and get in and get out and get paid, and they kind of just like kind of lights or the kind of entertainment industry. Like, I love, if I'm just a crew member, actually having interesting creative conversations with designers, and I think they respect that as well when they can come into a room and they kind of feel more reassured when the crew have a respect for what they're doing, you know, because then it's a conversation rather than an ask because of who you are in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, that phrase that you said there, or those two words, respect and pragmatism. I mean, you know, they're kind of really great ethos to kind of, or odes to kind of follow. One more question before I let you go. In relation to your design work, is there there is a difference, but I suppose what's attractive about, say, working on smaller stuff, I don't mean necessarily financially smaller, but smaller stages, to working with scale? And can you talk a bit about the kind of challenges with either? Because it's a presumption that, God, if you're working on a big stage, it's harder, but in fact, that might not be the case.
Yeah. Small stages even and big stages have their own differences, and kind of the big stages that I work on generally aren't too much theatre. It's more maybe concerts and gigs, which I've actually this year, because Evie said to me, she was like, what's something that you like, what's your goal? She's like, what's your 5-year goal as a lighting designer or whatever? I was like, I don't know, work with whatever, work in the Abbey or something. Then she was like, okay. But then as I thought about it, I was like, I actually would love to be the lighting designer for like Electric Picnic or something like that, like that big concert, big stadium size, loads of kit, loads of gear, and kind of make, like, because you know when you're at a concert and stuff happens and you're like, because rarely in theatre you want the lights to not be intrusive, and when they are, it's generally not a great thing, you know, unless it's asked for in the production. So like, there is a moment in my life, and it may be like egotistical or selfish or whatever, that you want people to go, those lights are class, like that looks deadly. And like, there's nothing kind of more narratively good about it then that they look deadly. And that's what I kind of want. And then you bring it right back to on a small stage where you don't see any of the lights from the masking, and maybe it's just a couple of side lights and a tiny bit of haze or something like that. And it's as powerful when the piece is powerful and when all the pieces kind of come together, kind of set, lighting, direction, performance. That's as magic as in a stadium going, oh my God, like there's like strobes and everything like that. It's finding those pieces, and they don't happen in every show. They really don't. And there's definitely times where you just catch yourself. It might be on tour or whatever, and you've seen the show a million times and you're up in it, and there might be just a slight shift. And it's amazing when you've watched a show so many times, because I've done it myself on tour for a couple of weeks. There'll be a show where the actor has said the lines, the lights have been exactly the same, but there's just a feeling, and there's kind of also a kind of synergy between all the departments, even the ops and the stage manager, and it can feel different. And those are the times where it's just like magic. You know, you can feel it's actually like you can reach out and grab it. And so I suppose it's totally different, the things, the big scale and the small theatres. And I think unless you've experienced it, you couldn't really sell it to anybody. But I've yet to design Electric Picnic. Maybe I will in a couple of years. But I have had the experience of the small, tangible magic of small scale theatre, which I think people, unless like that they experience it, they will find it hard to realise what I'm saying.
Suzie, well, I realise exactly what you're saying. You have to creating. I think they will realise you have to create a spell there in the way you're talking. I'm going to leave it at that. That was brilliant. Thanks very, very much for taking part, and hope to talk to you again soon when we're all released from our caves.
Yes.
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 See you soon.
Stay safe.
All right.